morning. My name is Jay Carpenter, and today this session is going to be about universal unified identity and state. So this is a new proposal, a new approach, and I'm going to be using a new mental model for all of us to get our arms around this particular concept proposal. And right up front, I'd like to say that there's an opportunity for you to participate in a hands-on session, in-person session at the Internet Archive on August 27th, starting at 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. We're going to have an in-person session which will include the Braid.org community as well as the naming brand for this Universal Unified Identity and State, UUIS, is StarCamps. So you can go to www.starcamps.net. You can take a picture of all this. And that's going to be your entry point for further information, further participation in this. Okay? And this is designed, let me put this right up front. So this is designed for people to get involved in this. And there is a monetization mechanism that will be proposed for your participation, whereby you can create things and you have the potential as participants in the community to create monetization for yourselves. Okay? That's part of what's available out of this. And I'll go into this a little bit. So any questions at this point before I get started? Yes, Matt?
Is StarCamp.net the right domain? It's asking me to buy the domain.
No. StarCamps. I'm sorry.
Plural?
It's camps. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thanks.
So there's an S here.
Thank you. So it's StarCamps. So this is addressing what's considered to be the #1 challenge in computer science. What is that challenge? It is creating a construct that addresses human identity. So that's what's on the table. Thank you for your participation. Any other questions before I continue? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to kind of run through these slides, but most of all, what I'm really interested in is your feedback. We've got a very short period of time. This is going to be an introduction for you to start to consider a new realm of trust, of control, and of value. It's available for all of humanity. Okay? All right, here we go. Ready? All right, so this is, if you put in Universal Unified Identity and State into ChatGPT 4.0, this is what I came up with. Universal UUIS refers to a conceptual framework or system designed to provide a single cohesive identity and state management mechanism that can be applied across different platforms, applications, and services. The idea is to solve the issues related to fragmented identities and inconsistent state management by creating a unified system that ensures consistency, security, and ease of use. And I'd really like to highlight security. Our centralized networks are failing more frequently and bigger failures. And part of this dimension is an alternative. And a part of what is available for the DWeb community is to create an attractive migration path for all the societal constructs that are on centralized constructs that are now failing frequently, what if we could create an attractive path for migration from the centralized constructs to the decentralized constructs? And what if we could show our governmental, our enterprise, our personal centralized constructs a new way to have the virtual digital value and precious information that we all live off or constitute our safety, our families, everything. What if we could show everybody something that's been battle-tested in the most extreme adversarial situation, which is the Ukraine. The Ukraine, nobody expected Ukraine to last for more than 3 days under the Russian cyber attack. We are almost 3 years into this conflict. And I'm not taking either side, the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. All I'm saying is that we have an example of battle-tested Web3 constructs that have withstood the most extreme digital challenge. And that's part of what's available through this. So let me run through this. You might recognize this guy. This guy represents the human-friendly side. And this is a public key. The machine-friendly. There's a huge gap between these two. And that's one of the things that's available out of this approach is what if we could have this gap turn into this? What if there was a way for humans to dance with the machine-friendly constructs of Web3 networks? So, this is part of the unification. There are 3 very separate realms that really don't dance together. And I come from a background in telecom, and I've spent years in the telecom community dealing with this. But the telecoms, which was the origination date was sometime around 1876, really do not dance with the Web 1 and 2. And the Web 1 and 2 really does not dance with the Web 3. So again, the date that I put on this, 1994, which is sometime around the time that Tim Berners-Lee created HTTP. And then one of you is probably Satoshi Nakamoto, sitting in this audience. You created the Byzantine fault tolerance consensus breakthrough using a market mechanism. Part of the goal, part of the opportunity set is, what if we could harmonize this? What if we could get all 3 circles dancing together? Why worry about this? Well, our friends at Bell Labs actually did a big step towards this unification years ago when they introduced a lettering system mapped to numbering that created a unification, or at least a dance floor for machines to dance with humans. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So this is something called Zuko's triangle. What if we could square Zuko's triangle? Zuko Wilcox postulated that you can have 2 out of 3 of these characteristics, but you can't have all 3. Zuko said, if you have human meaningful identifiers, you can either have decentralization or you can have security, but you can't have both. Or take your pick. If you want decentralization and human meaningful, then you can't have security. What if we could square that? What if we could add machine-friendly, human-friendly decentralization and security? What would that open up? Well, I did a session last year here at DWeb Camp on this very topic. And it was titled, Is DNS Bad? And I assert that if you flip around the fundamental of DNS such that there's a mapping of human-friendly lettering to machine-friendly numbering, you can actually square the rules of triangle. So, this is an article by Philip Sheldrake from July 14th, 2022, where he identifies human identity as the #1 unsolved computer science problem. And looking among this group, I know that many of you have wrestled with this problem for a long time. What's been missing? Well, in this talk, I touch upon two fundamental computer science problems that were unsolvable by the smartest computer scientists in the world until there was a market mechanism introduced. Number one was Byzantine fault tolerance. Nobody could solve Byzantine fault tolerance, decentralized consensus, until Rawad, I think you're actually Satoshi. Until Rawad over here produced the Bitcoin white paper in 2008 and said, okay, let's introduce mining rewards as a market mechanism that somehow magically weaves into networking and creates a workable solution to Byzantine fault tolerance. Number two, approximately 2013, a 19-year-old guy, Vitalik Buterin, says, what if we had global Turing-complete computation, which is another fundamental computer science problem that was unsolvable by the smartest computer scientists in the world. How could we solve it? Mr. Buterin says, well, what if we had gas? What if we introduced a market mechanism that provided a way for infinite loops to run out of gas and stop? Voila, you have a theory. Now we have global Turing-complete computation. I assert that one of the big missing pieces out of trying to solve the universal unified identity and state is if we had a market mechanism, we might be able to make progress in this. Okay, so this is a session that we did in the braid.org, and you can look it up where we talked about symmetry, identity, and state, and there's some links to some other presentations and so forth. This is the presentation that I did within this session. And by the way, this is Jonathan Edwards, who's a Google Fellow, who also taught computer science at MIT. This is Michael Tuman, who is the leader, I call him the leader, he doesn't want to accept the role, of braid.org. This is Greg Little, who has a PhD in computer science from MIT. This is Alyasha, who actually gave me that Philip Sheldrake article. He's very involved in a community that's looking for solutions to this identity and so forth. And then this is me, sort of the misfit of the group, trying to hang on to all the cognitive things that are being thrown out in the screen. All I'm saying is that this is a pretty knowledgeable group in multiple dimensions of computer science. So this gets into, okay, how does state fit in this? What I've gotten out of the Braid.org group is that I believe that there is an intricate, inextricable relationship between state and identity. That they are tied together. So what do I mean by that? I won't go into this too much, the objectivity, but it's like space and time. Intuitively, it seems like space is completely different than time. And yet the two are one and the same. Same with mass and energy. It seems like all this hard stuff has no relationship with energy. And yet if you look at it in a different view, this table has an energy equivalence. Same thing with particles and waves constituting light. So those are just 3 examples. But could state and identity have some sort of intertwined relationship? So, I'm not going to go into this too much. That's me. This is Larry Lessig, who was here a couple years ago, and talking about the relationship between code and law. And then this is Coase theory. Ron Coase introduced a concept where disputes over rights, specifically radio spectrum, could be resolved without a central arbitrator, like a court. And that's a critical piece to this. That's Ronald Coase. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics, I believe, in 1991. And this is Gödel's theory. Pardon me? And lived to 103. This is Gödel's theory. Kurt Gödel was one of 4 legendary mathematicians and physicists who were trying to solve this self-referential problem within mathematics. Most of you, I'm guessing, would consider mathematics to be, you couldn't challenge it. In fact, mathematics is fallible. Mathematics, if you get into an infinite loop, much like the infinite loops in that Vitalik Buterin solved, you can get into self-referential situations that all of a sudden things stop. And part of what I'm trying to tie in is that letter mapping to the number mapping is very much like what Kurt Gödel introduced to solve a very, very fundamental problem. And this is a really awesome documentary by the BBC talking about the challenges that these people faced. It actually drove them crazy. This is Schrodinger's cat. Okay? Aaron Schrodinger put forth this basically, mental model on a cat in a box with a poison that can be simultaneously dead and alive. That's him. He was also awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. But this highlights this relationship between observer and state. Okay? That I think is really, really important. And it's a rich dimension of this. Now, how many of you would say that does everybody agree this is a woman? How many of you would say this woman is older than 35? Okay. Ken. Okay, how many of you would say this woman is younger than 35? Okay, a few of you. Isn't that interesting? Has the black and white image changed? No, it hasn't. And yet, we have rather radically different worldviews of the meaning of this static construct. That is an example of part of what the problems have been in solving universal unified identity and state. And that also touches on both Kurt Gödel as well as Aaron Schrodinger's work. Now, what is this? This is a baseball game. All right? And we've got an umpire back here. And we've got an umpire on second base. The umpire is the centralized arbiter of truth. Right? It doesn't matter if this pitcher's pitch goes off to here. If the umpire says, that was a strike, it was a strike. Now that might upset a few fans, but the fact is, this centralized entity, an umpire, is the arbiter of truth. Here's a mental model for you. What if we could design a version of the game of baseball with no umpires? How would that work? Well, I think the problem set that we're dealing with in terms of solving this or creating a construct of universal unified identity and state is somewhat along the lines of designing a version of the game of baseball with no umpires. This just talks about the cookie apocalypse. The stakes that are on the table around this computer science problem are enormous. This is a little bit more about a different take on universal IDs, cookies. Whoops. I'm sorry, going backwards.
On the baseball example, does everybody agree on the outcome of the game without an umpire, or
Can we design that?
Okay.
That's the question. I'm not saying it's solved. I'm just putting it out there as an interesting little thought experiment. Okay. Now this is my ISDN backwards. This is an initiative that I've launched called Star Camps, where using this camp model as a way to cognitively, for us to get our minds around how a new approach to universal unified identity and state might work. So imagine that we had constructs called camps, and each one of you contains the seed for a camp in your pocket, if you have a cell phone. Imagine that your cell phone number could be the start of creating a camp that has a camp identifier associated with a public key that you can change. And of course, the public key has a private key, and you had a way to manage it. But within that camp, you had 10,000 campsites where you could build whatever you want on those campsites. It could be your social media. It could be a virtual world. It could be, you could allow your son or daughter or wife or husband or whatever to occupy one or more of those campsites. You've got this dynamic nature, and you have a way to create trust around your association with a given public key at a given point in time. So you have a cryptographic construct that starts to add in the trust factor as well as the control factor, as well as the public key not only does functions in privacy, it also represents a gateway to your identity. That's important to keep in mind. Okay. This is the beginning of a white paper. And you can see Star Camps is sort of this embodiment of both a virtual as well as a physical representation of this construct. And then also, which I haven't talked about and won't talk about at this point, is something called star chain. So star camps and star chain. And that's it. So let me go back to the beginning. How much time do we have?
15.
15 minutes? All right. Awesome. Now, what I'm really looking forward to, what's really valuable was not me going through this stuff. What's valuable is for the next 15 minutes, we have an opportunity, because I know who you are, most of you. I know the work that you have been engaged in. We have a collection right now of some of the world leaders in identity sitting within a circle of about 20, 30 feet. So, Peter, you have a question.
Well, I actually want to expound. The thing that really blew my mind when you kind of previewed this presentation for me yesterday.
And if you could speak up so we can
Yeah, sorry.
get this.
So Jake kind of previewed this presentation for me yesterday, and I don't think you really got into it as much as I think we should go back to the StarCap concept and talk about this 15-digit phone number and how that can be used as the basis for university unique identifiers, and how it's a totally untapped system that I think that's a mind-blowing concept in my opinion. I would love to have you talk a couple more minutes about that.
Sure.
On your last slide.
Was it my last slide? Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be hard to read that. So, let me direct you to this. The DWeb.camp Universal Identity State is the repository. Here it is. Here's what it is. So this. Here I've taken my cell phone number, okay, and I have created like a camp identifier, which is 15 digits, okay? Now, with that 15 digits, because of the letter mapping, which was created by Bell Labs, because they recognized this early, probably in the 50s. And Doc is left, but Doc and I were reminiscing. When I grew up, I could remember my telephone number because there was a phrase associated. It was Yellowstone. I can't remember what the digits were, but it was blah, 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 Yellowstone. And you could take that Yellowstone and you could determine what the numerics were. So this is the idea. Here's my cell phone number. And now I've created this camp ID and it's numeric. From this numeric form camp ID, I can create all sorts of phrases. Here's an example, 602 AAT GHTO. Now, maybe I can make a mnemonic from this. Here is something even better. I'm going to show you something at a glance, and I'm guessing you will be able to remember it at least by the end of this camp. One glance. Now do this with a hash or a
Gosh, yeah.
Now do this with a hash. I challenge anybody to do this with a hash or any of the other, or a UUID or anything else that is not human friendly. All right, you ready? I'm going to count to 5 and then I'm going to put it away. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lindsay, what did I show you?
Actually, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Are you sure you have enough digits?
You don't have, you can let the digits run over. Or yeah. So an example of that is 1-800 Walgreens. Walgreens, the phrase exceeds the digits. That's okay, that's perfect.
Can we just back up one more second,
Yeah.
just for my own purpose as well? Like, the phone number has 11 digits, but there's 15 possible numbers you can use.
Yes.
So the first 11 is your unique identifier. We all have a cell phone in our pockets right now with 11 digits unique identifier, right?
That's the,
And you have
that's
to
your,
act-
that's your
We can all
camp.
argue about whether we want to use phone numbers or not, but we're using, right now, we're using email addresses as identifiers, using all the, like, public key hashes, all these things. So your argument is that, well, we've all got the phone, we've got phones anyway, let's use it. You got 11 digits, then you got 4 more to play with. And so
Yes.
any combination of those 4 can create up to how many different combinations?
Well, you could create, I could take this first 11 digits and I could create an extension just like a private branch
Exactly, like you always
extension.
say,
Like
like X.
it can't.
The phone number is just a namespace, just the same as
Exactly.
SNP name.
Exactly, yeah.
The thing is, phones aren't universal. We all have phones, but phones aren't universal. Phone numbers aren't universal.
No, but we're gonna pick something what is universal right now. Like public key identifiers, like email address, not everybody wants an email address either.
That's a great point. So a phone number is like a dialable social security,
Yeah.
only it's even richer. It's verifiable. Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Ken.
so a phone number is yours, kind of.
Kind of, that's
And so do we
correct.
regulate our way out of that hole, or do we?
No, we do not.
People change numbers
Here's-
all the
here's-
time, they get taken away from people. It makes money.
I understand, and there's a way to accommodate that. Here's the key, we're not talking about phone numbers. We're,
That's probably me.
so, we're not talking about phone numbers. We're talking about something that's derived from phone numbers.
But once
This
you
is-
divide it as yours, or in this in-start.
Well,
It might match.
There, so there are 2 flavors of these, the camp IDs.
Yeah.
One flavor has potentially an underlying copper line telephone number matched to it. And if you want to control the camp ID that might have a telephone number associated with it, you have to prove that you are in control of that telephone. Now there's another set of these camp IDs that it's impossible to have a telephone number associated. And in that subset, so one set of camp identifiers has potentially telephone numbers where there could be a collision, and you've got to make sure that the subscriber to the telephone number is the only one that has rights to that camp ID. But there's another whole set, I'll call it white space, that, so in other words, if the first 4 digits of this was 4 ones, there is no telephone number, according to the ITU standards, that can start with 4 ones. That is greenfield. That is white space. So this model can accommodate both. So
Sure, but if Verizon can reassign the number to somebody else, how do we handle that identity? Is it the identity portable or sticky once I know?
So A, Verizon doesn't control your phone number anymore because of portability.
But they,
You-
but they,
you-
like, in reality, they
In reality, if the FCC came in and said, Kent, you're doing something we don't like, and we're gonna,
or even the Verizon store guy calls and complains about
Yeah.
to Verizon
Well-
Central, they make a mistake.
people are,
That's just in the US too. You've got to take a whole lot of phone
let's not get too deep into the weeds because of our limited time.
All right.
But,
But high level, I'm concerned that
I understand.
that the attacks already exist against this entity.
It is common, and it's gonna get more common, that people are going to maliciously port our numbers. Now, the good news is, we can port our numbers. Can you port your Gmail address? No. So that is a disadvantage of using email addresses as identifiers. What's even worse, what if Google goes away? What if Gmail?
Well, you still have the identifier, which isn't just Google or Gmail, it's the entire string. So if you're using that string as the basis for your namespace, Google can go where you still have that string number it's going to create.
It's not something you
Hey,
can less responsive.
listen, there's a bunch of different rabbit holes that can go in this whole thing. And all of you, again, you folks are, I'm standing here going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm standing in front of these people. Because you are the experts. And you're bringing up critical points. I don't know if this is going to work in reality. We've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to put a cap on the questions at this point because I'm going to articulate an opportunity. And the opportunity is this. I've set up a series of preliminary events where people can get involved. And you can see this information on the www.starcamps.net. There's a schedule. For the next 2 Tuesdays, on the 13th Tuesday and on the 20th of August at 7 p.m., there's going to be an open Zoom call where anybody can participate. And we're going to be talking about a few more preliminaries. On Tuesday, August the 13th, 7 p.m., the Zoom link is on a Google Doc that's under www.starcamps.net. On the 27th of August, starting at 5 p.m. at the Internet Archive, will be a live in-person event that will be limited to 20 people by invitation. Anybody can request an invitation by sending me an email, and by sending me an email, you will start to become part of the distribution list. But on Tuesday, August the 27th at 5 p.m., we'll open the doors, we'll have an hour of networking, 6 p.m. we'll have dinner to 7, and then at 7 we'll have more presentations on Star Camps as well as braid.org, which is state synchronization using HTTP. The following day, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., also at the Internet Archive, with lunch included, we will have a build session. We will start to assign camps to whoever's there. And we'll start to build. And there will be a very simplified set of off-the-shelf build elements, like a website, like Bitwarden, like Patreon, like I can't remember the other few, but off-the-shelf stuff where we can build something very similar, where we're matching a camp ID with a public key, and we'll start to play with this. I don't know what's going to happen, but here's the opportunity for you as developers. If you get involved in this, you can create your first camp, which is based upon the cell phone number that's in your pocket, but you'll also get to choose another camp that's of your choice that doesn't have a cell phone number associated with it, whereby you could create 1111, let's say San Francisco, or 1111 decentralization, or 1111, you name it, fun games, virtual reality. You pick your creativity, and we will create a marketplace whereby you could sell that. So it's very much like mining rewards with Bitcoin, where if you're in early, you will have the whole spectrum of phrases, so forth, that you can start to build upon, that you can start to monetize as a compensation for your participation just like the early miners in Bitcoin had an opportunity to participate, but there was also an opportunity to monetize their participation. We're out of time. Thank you so much.